Wonderful. Welcome everyone to another Golf Australia and Golf Management Australia webinar. Just today, obviously, roundtable discussion about where to from here. Golf clubs in a post-pandemic world. I think most of the country is hopefully starting to get to the other side of it for good, and I think by the looks of it, Victoria is well on its way as well. Little couple of weeks delay, but I'm sure they'll be there soon enough. So, without any further ado, I'll just introduce everyone that we've got around the table. First of all, I'll welcome co-host Paul Vardy, CEO of Golf Management Australia. Welcome, Paul, from lockdown in Victoria.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Sharon Purnell, General Manager of Mount Coolum Golf Club up there on the sunny coast. Welcome, Sharon. Thanks for joining us. Brett Holdway, the Business Development Manager from the Oaks Cypress Lakes Resort in the Hunter Valley, tucked into one of our favourite wine regions. Welcome, Brett. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for the invite.
No problems at all. And Steve Freeling, the General Manager of the Westwood Ho Golf Club down here in Adelaide, a golf club resident golf club to the West Beach Parks facility just next to the Adelaide Airport. If you look out the left-hand side of the window as you come in from the coast, if you're flying into Adelaide, you can see the facility under there. Thanks for joining us, Steve. Welcome.
Thank you, Matthew.
We'll crack in, guys. I just want to sort of open up. How has the sort of post-pandemic golf been for you? I think we'll open up with Sharon up there. How has business been since everything's calmed and people have realised they can get back out on the golf course?
Look, obviously in Queensland on the Sunshine Coast, we've been very, very lucky because golf's been one of those sports that obviously you can still do. So golfing rounds have been excellent with social play. Our competition rounds have been excellent. And I think too, getting people, the social players, but also getting members that weren't members, rejoining because they've got more time. And so on that side of it, it's been very good for us. The changes to it with all of the, the rakes and flags and all that sort of thing, took a few people a little bit sort of to get their head around that. But I think it's some of it, especially with sort of the rakes and things, it's been great because I think it's sped up play a lot too, with having to rake bunkers and things like that. But we've been, can't complain. We've been very lucky here in Queensland, that's for sure.
Brilliant. And just for some context, Mount Coolum Golf Club, private facility, semi-private, where would you sort of put it in that?
We're obviously member-run club. We're open to social play, so we're sort of, in a way, semi-private as such. I guess you'd probably put us in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So you've been welcoming plenty of sort of green fee players. Obviously locals more so than tourists, which I suppose would be a normal thing for you.
Yeah. So normally, obviously, being Sunshine Coast, we're very obviously a lot of the tourism, and obviously now that borders closed and that etc. So we are focused a lot more. I think people just having the time now to be able to play and thinking, oh, okay, I wouldn't mind taking up that sport. I even heard the sale of clubs, with people wanting big beginner sets and things that's been skyrocketing too. And it's just say, okay, let's get out here, and they're out in the fresh air and the sunshine, and obviously it's great for the health and well-being.
Yeah, fantastic. Steve, just jumping to you, you're obviously attached to a public facility down here. Mm-hmm. How's that gone for you? What sort of challenges have you seen around course access for your members versus public and that sort of stuff?
Yes, well, the timesheet's been very difficult to manage, I guess, from a pro shop perspective. So we've got set members' times here, which have been full basically every day. And we've seen a bit of a calm down now, which has obviously been good and allowed that accessibility a bit better. Right at that start, at that crunch point, the timesheet, similar to a lot of other places that I've heard, were booked up till 4 or 5. So it was really difficult to get on. So it's really just a perspective like that. On the flip side, though, it's really opened a lot of opportunities for the club as well. We've just had people walking through the doors wanting to sign up that membership form, which is probably a position over the last couple of years personally at the club we haven't had that. It's been a really big focus on marketing and those, whereas right now they're just sort of walking in and joining the club, which is a fantastic position to be in. And second to that, I guess something that we didn't really predict with the COVID during our planning phase, I guess during shutdown, was that average age of golfer has significantly dropped. at our golf club, and I'm not sure if other clubs are seeing that. I would only assume so. So we found that a lot of our elderly members, those with, I guess, some sort of ailments, really had that, I guess it was that perfect time for them to give up golf. And on the flip side, we've had that many younger golfers, new golfers to the sport. The Get Into Golf program has been fantastic for our club over the last couple of months. Come and join the club. So I think coming out of that from a sustainability perspective, we'll be in a much stronger position.
Yeah, awesome. That's a topic I really want to dive into today a little bit, is the difference between the member that you typically attract and the member that you're attracting now across all three facilities. I'd like to really hear about that as we sort of dive in today. But yeah, it's interesting to see that you have seen that change and how the clubs have to adapt to sort of move on from there. Brett, you've got quite a different venue than Sharon and Steve, in that you're almost a resort accommodation all in one. How has it affected you guys? Obviously, accommodation challenges will be difficult given border closures, etc. How has Cypress Lakes adapted?
Yeah, look, to be honest, we've seen a massive increase in business. We're, like you said, we're predominantly a resort style course, but having said that, we do have financial members in the club, so we don't have as many as a traditional club. We probably have around about 200 playing members. So the beauty with that is the Wednesday, Saturdays aren't really affected to the members, so we were able to get them out, so they haven't sort of been displaced, which is a great thing. But in terms of border lockdowns and shutdowns, for us, it's just gone viral, golf in New South Wales, because there's such a small hub to travel. They're all coming out to the Hunter Valley. So it's really business in general in the valley's just at maximum peaks, like back in the heyday. So we've seen significant increase in rounds, on and off since March. A lot of play and stay groups coming through, and the hotel at full occupancy on weekends, which is great for the Oaks model. And an interesting thing in the pandemic, it hasn't really been price driven. People have just been so desperate to get out and do things other than discussing COVID. The rate hasn't been a factor either. So we've seen some really strong financial months for the model, which is great. And it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. That's very interesting to hear that it's been flying, particularly the accommodation side of things. That's really positive. Paul, just before I throw to you, any of the participants, if you do have any questions or if there's a topic you'd like to ask some questions on, feel free to throw that question into either the chat or the Q&A function just at the bottom of the screen. Just click that there, and if it's really detailed, we can put your microphone on and you can ask your question direct. Paul, I just want to touch on that. You obviously speak to GMs across the country in a range of roles. Is that sort of accommodation story that Brett's just told us there? Does that resonate throughout the country?
All the stories, pardon me, they'd all resonate throughout the country. I think certainly there's a lot of money kept in the country because people over winter haven't been able to travel somewhere else, and often that's not for golf travel. It's just travel for warmer weather or other forms of tourism. So the fact that there's a lot of people stayed in their local area for the winter has been a boom for golf, providing you're open, of course. Victoria's not open, but or Melbourne hasn't been open. So and that's probably going to continue. What we're hearing also is that for example, in WA, where things are like Queensland, largely back to normal, when kids' sports have gone back, the tide hasn't really gone out for golf. The golf's still very busy and booming. The ones that have probably got the most benefit have been the ones that have had capacity to take more golfers. There's a lot of private clubs, Matt, who their members are just playing a lot of golf, and they've really a closed shop. They'd love to be able to do more, but they just don't have the capacity. So I think that's a wonderful story out of all this, is that a lot of country courses have probably improved their numbers of interested golfers and been able to take them in. And then, like Steve was saying and Brett, a lot of places that are able to take some visitors have benefited as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's you're right. That ability to take visitors is something that is critical because you've been able to bring new people into the game and get some new visitors that you wouldn't have had before. Is that a risk, though, that we've got, and I open this to the panel, that some of those clubs that have reached their capacity with members, is there any risk there that we're now shutting the gate as such because we're so focused on looking after our members as opposed to bringing new people into the game?
We're not at capacity with our membership numbers, but I do know other clubs on the Sunshine Coast that are, and it's pretty much purely now members only. So I guess that's where we were sort of still lucky where we could allow to have, we left it open for social players to still come. But yeah, I know there is just pretty much a couple of clubs on the coast here that is purely just pretty much at capacity. And which is obviously good that they're getting the income from the membership side, but then they're obviously missing that green fee component too of having those social players coming out.
Yeah, correct, absolutely.
There's the other element, I suppose, which is, I guess, as much as clubs probably can't take new members, that there might be full, having the mechanisms in place to be able to keep in touch with the people who are in some ways courting the club. It's really important. I think that there might be opportunities down the track. Also, I guess naturally people would find a path to another more accessible venue if they can't get in. But I think there's still an opportunity there to retain those names, keep in touch, get them into programs, feed them in the ecosystem of golf. I think that's really important for golf to capitalise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, and let's use that to shift to that capitalising topic. Steve mentioned that his members that he's noticed joining now are significantly younger than the members that they typically have joining the club. Brett, have you seen any change in your sort of membership there, or has your change really been around that tourist that's coming in?
Look, we've done a great job in our membership renewals that most of the members that we've had have all retained because they've obviously all working remotely or got more leisure time now, so they see value in the membership because they're playing more, so that's a good thing. I think where we've picked up additional members has been ones that have come out of Sydney or they've come up to play golf and then they've realised some of the categories we've got, come and played the course, played to play it, and they've obviously then additionally asked the question, what's membership worth to join? So we've seen quite an uptake in members coming across from public play for play rounds, which has been really good and encouraging. We have we have a bit of a juggling act, obviously. At the moment, we've sort of got to work what our capacity, I think, to take members is, as opposed to then the resort guests that come in and play golf, because we've got to balance a fine line of when the play and stay groups come in, that they've got to get access to the tee sheets on a Saturday as well. So we sort of couldn't load up, say, 200 members playing golf on a Saturday, and it's sort of the way the structure works. The members get away early and priority times. It leaves us plenty of times to juggle the hotel guests in as well. So at the moment, it's sort of sitting in a very nice little even plane where the members are happy and we can get the guests on. So we're sort of doing a little bit of work around that at the moment over the next, if we look at 2 years, say, what is the optimal amount of members that we require? We have a lot of financial members on the book. We probably have, 450 to 500, but realistically there's about a 150 to 200 playing base out of that. We've got the other members out of Sydney that are at other traditional clubs in Sydney, and this is their second course, so they'll just pay the subs and we mightn't see them a few times in the year, which that works out well for our model as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but obviously it's for Oaks and their model, obviously the pay for play is what they like to see, but the membership adds a nice little foil into additional pick up and spend in the resort as well for the members. So yeah, we think we've got the mix right at the moment, but we've got to see what that optimal number for members is. And as I said, at least the pay for play coming through, they're asking the questions, which we probably wouldn't have seen in the past, to be honest. So yeah, okay. It's a good thing at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Sharon, what about yourself? Like, you're more whilst you're in a tourist area, you are sort of in a residential area as well. Like, plenty of people live on the Sunny Coast where you are. Have you noticed a change in that member that's joining?
Yeah, what we're sort of finding that a lot of the members were past members, and I think now they're rejoining, they're coming back to it. I think it was also too because you didn't have much of the kids sports and stuff on the weekend, so then they had the more time to be able to play. And a bit similar to what Steve was saying, we have had some younger, more in that intermediate bracket joining too, wanting to get into the sport. And I remember playing with a couple of guys that were background was sort of football, and then now they've taken the path to golf. So yeah, we definitely have seen the change in the demographic, and just I think people more have, and I actually did have one fellow that was joined up, and he goes, "Oh, I've got so much time." He said, "I'm a Jobkeeper. I've got all the time, extra time to be able to play." So yeah, bonus on that side. Event, obviously.
ScoMo's funding his golf activity. That's always a win.
Yes, I did. Yes, we have had that since. So yeah.
So then, have you noticed any difference in their playing habits? Like, are they playing the typical sort of midweek comp day, Saturday comp, like a traditional, like a previous member would, or are they playing at sort of different times? How is that new member interacting with the club?
They seem to be heavily wanting to play competition, which, in the past, you sort of get a lot of people would join and they're more sort of bit of that social game. But the majority of them are wanting to get their handicap and, get into playing with the comps. So we have comps pretty much, most days here. So, our busiest still is obviously on the Saturday, but we have our second biggest one is today, but very heavily supported. Like you look on the timesheets and, what everybody else is saying, and not a lot of gaps in the field. And so most competitions are very well supported. Yeah.
And Steve, is that what you're sort of seeing as well? Being in a public facility, your members, are they continuing to mix in and play comp, or is it is there a bit of a social aspect to it, or?
It's difficult to obviously have exact percentages or whatever, but the vibe I'm getting is most of them are there for that competition, that competitive play, and mostly on sort of that Saturday time. Being the younger member, they're sort of after that better competition. We've obviously got a lot of stress on the timesheets during the week, simply because we don't have the members who are usually away, travelling overseas, hooking the caravan off and going regional. They're all here, so they're all playing golf as normal, but really just focusing on those new members. Yeah, Saturday comp, competitive play. And then you've got a few, I guess, real freshies who are not quite at that stage yet, and they're happy. We're lucky here with the executive course, which for everyone who's listening is a smaller 15-hole par 3/4, just out there for more of a short game. They're out there just on their lonesome, just happy to have a hit, enjoy the sun and enjoy, I guess, being active when a couple of months ago they couldn't be.
Yeah, okay. With assuming a lot of these members are coming out of other sports as well, is there discussion around the board table and within the staffing that perhaps we need some strategies to retain some of these members moving forward into next year, when things like we can assume football, cricket, soccer, netball will be back on? Is there some strategies that you're working through as boards there?
There's always that risk, I believe, but we've sort of had a bit of a focus on sort of getting to golf. So we're introducing new participants to the sport who may not already be committed to a sport. I don't think, and if we make sure our product's spot on and they're included in the club and they're followed up as a new member, any issues are dealt with swiftly, we're confident in our model that they'll stay in the sport and stay in the club.
Yeah, okay. How about up there, Sharon? Sorry, Paul, go for it.
I was just going to say, I guess we're all saying this on the basis that our existing members are our still most important people, of course, and of course our existing customers are most important. But the opportunity for growth is obviously the thing that's changed. So I guess the ability to find new ways to actually even have capacity to have more time. So like I spoke to a GM, for example, who, because they have a 1T start, they've always had the capacity on a Saturday after 1 o'clock to put visitors on the golf course, and that wouldn't be available if you had a 2T start. You'd probably be 3:30 by the time someone could play, and then it's often a little bit late. So what clubs can find in their their routines and maybe make more use of twilight golf, or just balancing the amount of golf that happens across the week rather than in these traditional days. That might be some areas that clubs can open up. But Sharon, you might have thoughts on all that as well.
Well, see, we ended up, our club year starts the 1st of October, so we just sent subscriptions out and we run a promotion, you know, having 15 months for the price of 12, because that was what we were scared of getting these people that will just pay that last quarter and then you'll lose them. So that's why we sort of went down that path and we thought, okay, we'll do a promo. And we had quite a few join up. So they paid the 12 months in advance and obviously got the 50, so they will have these 3 months, you know, for free. And I think that has definitely helped, because we would have probably had about, probably close to probably 15, 20, I guess, that took up that option to do that. I guess that's the thing. You just want to, like we're all trying to say, we want to retain these members that we've got. And that's the thing, that once all these different sports come back out, you know, that they may go back to the norm. So, and we have quite a few different categories too. We have some, you know, players pay and play and a social golfer, to try and entice those ones that, you know, that maybe don't have the extra time or don't want to be the serious competition player. So we have looked at different strategies and have, you know, implemented some different categories and things like that. So at the end of the day, it'll be very interesting to see what, you know, at the end of this month, as to what members we do retain and what percentage, because we, in the past, we have, you know, we could lose anywhere between sort of 10 to 15%.
I think at the end of the day, if they have an affiliation with the club, say they've come and had a good experience for 6 months, they may go back and play footy or soccer for a few more seasons. But as we know, golf's a lifelong sport. Ultimately, you'd expect them to come back through the door at some stage, which is only a good thing.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
And I think another element of that, Steve, would be there's the time aspect, which is probably dominating the landscape at the moment, and that's driven largely what's happened in golf. That we've people that had time released into their lives, and they've had fewer choices in what to do with that time, or other things have closed off. So golf's just dominated. But the ability to, you know, get a human connection and familiarity with names, and you know, pro shops getting to know the new people and those people assimilating into the way the club works and having really good friendly experiences. That's probably about the maximum a club can do, because the club can't control the amount of time that's going to either stay in someone's life or be cut off when things go back to normal. But they can control, you know, the connection and the assimilation into the club, the way it does things. So,
yep, agreed.
Ellie's just asked us a question here. Ellie's wondering what Golf Australia is doing to support keeping the new members in sport, as clubs can't do it all. I think it's a valid question. I think that, Ellie, our role is to encourage clubs to really look at those new members and what it is that they want from the club, and how their behaviour is different to say a member that's been at the club for a while. Bearing in mind what Paul said before, that the most important customer that you've got is the one that you've had for a while as well, because that is still the bulk of the club memberships. But our role is to absolutely encourage the facilities to have a look at those new members and potentially adapt some products, or just to tweak the way they do things around, whether it's competition play, social play, etc. Some of the other things that I'd look forward to from us is the introduction of Get Into Golf, which is the adult participation program that clubs can run with either the help of their PGA member or with the community instructor to teach the game. So that's the product that we've got that'll help clubs drive new members into their venues. But ultimately, Golf Australia doesn't control clubs and facilities. We have to do all we can to encourage clubs to have a look at what's going on. Throwing it out to the group, is there anything that sort of you potentially look for from Golf Australia to help in this regard? Question without notice.
Yeah, I still just think it's really the responsibility of the club, like Paul was saying. You know, we do. You want to have they just want to have that good feeling when they come here, and that everybody's friendly and they're welcoming. And you know, there's nothing worse if you go somewhere and you have a bad experience. We want them to all have a good experience, whether it's just having a social game, interacting with the pro shop, the bar staff, the admin staff. You know, so it is a lot to do. Obviously, it's the club's responsibility to be retaining these members and making them feel like they're part of that tribe. That's where they want to come. This is their little community hub for them to, you know, get away from everything.
Yeah, for sure.
There's probably, Matt, an awareness too. Sorry, there was a great study on season ticket holders in football clubs, and that the biggest factor that led to a churn or the drop off of membership essentially wasn't, in this case, it wasn't team performance, and it wasn't a whole lot of other things that people assumed. It was their tenure into the club. So there's a really high drop off rate for new people into new activities. Once you get over the 3 or 4 year mark, people become very much embedded and rusted on. But it's those first few years, and this is common regardless of what's happened in the recent times, that clubs just need to spend more focus on the new people to get them into those routines and assimilated, because you're highly vulnerable in those first few years. And also there's a power dynamic a little bit too. Routines within clubs, we all know we've got our board events and our, you know, the people who are most well known in the club. For a new person coming into that environment, they're pretty much got to navigate who's who in the zoo. They're not particularly well known. It's a different lens they have on the club. So that's why management of clubs and the board, they need to prime their members to be helping out here and trying to make sure everyone feels really good about being part of the club scene. Sorry, Steve, you were going to go say something next too.
It was along the similar lines. It was more about that. How do we reduce those barriers to entry to joining a club? I think it's scary for newbies, especially we've seen all these people now picking up a golf stick for the first time, having a hit, enjoying it, and they sort of go, where to next? So, for instance, like the Get Into Golf program, how do we work with our professional to make sure maybe they come into the club for a drink after and meet a few members of the board, and then that sign-on process isn't old school and archaic like it traditionally has been at some clubs, to make sure that's, I guess, a really easy, friendly process. And that initial, similar to what Paul and Sharon are saying, that initial period of joining is pleasurable and a really memorable experience.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah, makes sense. Let's just flick on to sort of the business of golf clubs a little bit. Jobkeeper was a pretty was a substantial stimulus package that was handed down by the government, and from some of the survey work we did of clubs when the pandemic hit, we'd say the vast majority of golf clubs that did have staff were eligible for that in round one. I'm assuming that all 3 clubs were eligible for that.
Yeah.
Sharon, Steve, Brett.
Correct.
Yep,
Yep.
everyone's nodding. That's obviously running out at the end of this month, and JobKeeper 2.0 is coming in. And I think in the 3 states that we're talking about at the moment, eligibility for 2.0 is probably going to be fairly challenging. There will definitely be some clubs in other states, and there might be the odd outlier that's eligible for 2.0, but largely I think we're going to be ineligible. Is there any aspects of your business, and I might start with you, Brett, that are going to be left a little bit exposed by not being eligible by 2.0? And then how are you then reviewing that sort of exposed operation to try and minimise the impact of that?
I suppose we should dial it back a little bit from a non-golf perspective, because obviously the Oaks were substantially, were eligible for JobKeeper with the amount of hotels and properties we have around Australia and New Zealand. So, and their revenues were substantially hit. So I think in terms of the organisation, when 2.0 gets rolled out, I'm pretty sure at some point the organisation will still be eligible for that moving forward. But that was probably a question for Shawnee, the GM. He's more in touch with our major head offices with that that sort of aspect of JobKeeper. But I think as a hotel group, we'll still get a little bit of kickback from that, I think, moving forward. We still actually have quite a few staff on stand down, so it's been very strategically done across our business lines with, obviously the mice and events is a big part of our business here, and weddings. So we still have quite a lot on stand down. So we actually have to see out the end of September on who's coming back, I suppose. But from a golf perspective, we have a pretty small team at Cyprus. So even if we are to lose that and the numbers that are coming through, I think golf's been one of the success stories for the Oaks Group. So I think, we'll travel all right, and we haven't, all our team are back, so we haven't got any guys on stand down anymore in the golf department, which is good. So we had our full complement come back in July, which was great. So so from the golf perspective, I don't think it'll change too much, even if we lose a bit of that support. The hotel, I think, will still pick up a bit of the support. But that in fairness, that's probably a question if Sean was on the call today from the overarching. But I think golf, because we're going so well, we will definitely lose that portion of JobKeeper 2.0. I think definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Sharon, how about at Mount Coolum? How does that stack up there? Is there any sort of areas of the business that are going to be left exposed?
Look, we pretty much like what Brett said. We only had a couple of our ground staff stood down right early in the piece, and then obviously as soon as JobKeeper came in, we had got them all back on deck. Look, I guess in hindsight, as I said earlier, that JobKeeper has been a saving grace for a lot of the golf clubs, and my board in particular. At our last board meeting, it's obviously looking at budgeting, and we obviously have that in the budget, and we've budgeted to not be getting it with the next lot. But look, we have discussed having a real look at the structuring and just with numbers in all of the different areas and things like that. And and also too, just looking at the marketing side of it, and to try and look that, okay, we really do need to focus on the membership, and we also need to focus on the green fee, because obviously that's the revenue that we need to be getting to obviously be replacing the income that we've been receiving through the government funding. So
is this almost a bit of an opportunity for you then? Are you really looking to strongly market in your area to try and generate as much revenue as you can through golf, etc.?
Yeah, we've
still a bit of a decline in hospitality.
Yeah, we've been looking. We did a strategic plan, just finished that probably about a month ago, and really focusing on the marketing side of it now, the marketing plan, and having the goals and objectives, and obviously your two key ones are your membership and your green fees, and just trying to, really focus on that, be revenue driven to tap into all those different areas. Because even like we've got the clubhouses open, and still it's not up at capacity with, your income that we were getting in the past with gaming and that also. So yeah, it is. It's going to be a bit of a tight. Budget-wise and stuff, we run it pretty tight anyway, but it will be tight once we don't have that generous funding coming in, I must say.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So in terms of like gaming, I think gaming's probably an interesting one in that I'd suggest that most golf clubs in the country don't have gaming as such. So that's probably a bit of an outlier in itself. Is that revenue, and you don't have to talk specifics, but is that revenue severely impacted at this stage, or have you seen some recovery in that area as well?
We only have 16 machines here. We weren't making a huge amount on it, but it's funny, because we weren't making a lot on it, but now that it has reopened, we actually seem to be doing a little bit better with it. So once again, I don't know if people just have that extra bit of income, and that's because I did hear, I think on the radio this morning about gambling, how figures had increased quite dramatically. I think maybe, people have got that little bit of surplus income.
It's amazing what happens when we can't go on overseas holidays.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Steve, with your business there, we're not obviously having control over the golf and the income there. How are you faring at the moment with sort of hospitality turnover being the focus, and then how does JobKeeper 2.0 sit with you?
At this stage, it's not looking like we'll be eligible, but I'm sort of keeping an eye on it closely, and we'll sort of see how things go over the next sort of month. Our day-to-day focus has been sort of on our day-to-day operations. So we've obviously lost a lot of the events that were pre-booked in. So with the extra green fee players playing, we've sort of tried to get them, make sure they're coming into our public bar, and because they've usually got that bigger spend than our members who sort of have similar spending patterns week in, week out. So our focus on there. So then I guess we've seen our turnover sort of on par, if not a little bit up on last year. And it'll be interesting to sort of see where it goes from there. What we did during the, closure period was really look at our structures. So I guess now I'm sort of getting a bit more into operations of what we did, but it's sometimes, good to know what's happening at the ground level, was made our chef redundant. And then we've trained our kitchen staff up in the kitchen as well. So every day we don't have a paid chef on staff. So that's reduced our liabilities a little bit as well. And that was really just something as a bit of a, if stuff goes pear-shaped again, we've got that little bit of cushion to rely on. And really our focus is on reducing spending, increasing that cash balance in the bank if there is a second wave or something like that. So a bit of that risk management for down the track.
And that restructure just made you a little bit more agile, so that if you've got a busy kitchen day, you can shift into there. If you've got a busy bar day, you can shift there. It's just made you a little bit more efficient.
Exactly right. Instead of having a chef there, and on some days it's a rain day or whatever, and there's not many bums on seats, at this point in time, then there's other things they can sort of be doing, or we can send one of those staff home, and one staff or two staff can cover both areas. So exactly right. And then we've got re-employed a chef on a casual and part-time basis. So, and we'll reassess that every month moving forward as sort of events start to come back in, which we're hoping. We've seen a couple of events start to rebook now, which is great. But during that big 4-month period, similar to everybody else, was, all your 21st, your 50th, all those things that really top us up from a hospitality perspective, and really help us pay those bills, obviously left, which I bet luckily, obviously, Jobkeeper really supplemented that. And that was sort of on par income wise. So at the end of the day, we'll sort of be in a similar position what we were without this. Yeah.
Paul, just shifting to perhaps like a bit of a Victorian conversation here. I mean, it seems like clubs around the country have had a bit of an opportunity to cash up, so to speak, at the moment, when we were eligible for Jobkeeper at the start of the pandemic, and that was obviously a once you're in model. And so now with business sort of booming from a green fee perspective, from what Brett's telling us from an accommodation and traveller perspective as well, it's almost been a bit of a free kick for clubs. In Victoria, where that free kick hasn't existed as such, how do you think clubs are going to go moving forward? Like even Jobkeeper 2.0 is still not as fruitful as Jobkeeper, the original version that we're in at the moment. How do you think clubs are going to react to that moving forward? And are we going to see a lot more clubs under financial duress?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, Matt, because I think, and it's more specifically Melbourne than Victoria, because Victoria, outside of Melbourne, is largely playing 2 balls, and that's a big advantage, even though it's not perfect. It's a big step ahead of playing nothing. I think because clubs are largely membership businesses, it does raise the question about the need to morally perhaps look at an extension of the membership subscription year, because that really does hurt a golf club's income. So, but when you've been shut down for initially 45 days and then another 63 up until what was going to be the next week, and then there's an extension now, another extension will take it till at least the end of October and beyond now, with limitations. So it starts to really hurt, and I know clubs are looking at that very closely. It's interesting too, just the nature of clubs that we've held as a good model to be a pay by the month type model, where rather than be hit with an annual subscription once off. But even in this period of time, it does put more pressure on the model, because if you're paying a monthly subscription amount, direct debit, then when you're shut for a few months, it starts to really start questioning that. So, so as much as Jobkeeper will probably be very eligible for most clubs as we go into 2.0, the big issues will be just the income coming in. Golf will explode once reopens, there's no question about that. It'll explode, probably at higher levels than we've seen the first time round for everybody.
Well, we saw that. We saw the
spreading.
numbers in the first sort of release of
Mm.
restrictions in Victoria, and I know the competition round numbers were obscene. Like it was 35 to 40% growth, which is just phenomenal. Barry Keane has just asked a bit of a question and sort of statement that regional Victoria is being disadvantaged by the lockdown, and I want to sort of segue into perhaps some of the learnings that we've had around golf booming. And how potentially Victorian and metropolitan Melbourne clubs can take advantage of those restrictions being lifted. Sharon, you would have seen potentially a bit of a sort of a die off just as restrictions are coming in, and then it sort of kicked off pretty quick. Was there any good learnings that you had from that? And if you had your time over again, was there anything that you'd change going into that extremely busy period?
Look, probably just maybe managing the timesheets a little bit better, I guess, because it was just a learning curve for everybody. We were just sort of they kept just moving the goalposts and everything just kept getting changed all the time. And yeah, maybe, and I guess sort of, look, hindsight's a good thing, and having a bit of a risk assessment strategy in place. I think this has been a big learning curve in that side of it, because I know me personally, we don't have a disaster recovery plan in place for sort of situations like this, and I think we do need to learn from that and implement those sort of things, because at the start of it, we had the timesheets here, we were still thinking, do we do 2 tees, 1 tee, and taking off the time in between them and all sorts of 7-minute, 8-minute, trying to keep the distance. And I guess in hindsight, probably just having a little bit more understanding of the best way to go in that sort of side of it. So it has been very much a learning curve, I must say. But hey,
No doubt about that.
for everybody. Yeah.
Brett, how about you guys? Like, you've obviously had some pretty busy times, and whether it was expected or not in accommodation and sort of the aspects of your business. Any learnings that you think, if you had your time over again, you would change the way you've gone about it?
Look, I think we were sort of a little bit in a luckier situation that obviously when it all first hit and it was only members and sort of 2 balls going out and gradually going into 4 balls, we sort of had enough time, I suppose, to think when things and accommodation and people were able to travel were going to open up, we were set for it. We sort of toyed around with 1 tee, 2 tees, how we could maximise tee sheets, how not displacing members. We came back to the model that sort of always worked here. The 1 tee, we don't run 2 tees. We don't do the shotguns at the moment due to recommendations from you guys at Golf Australia and PGA and those guys. So we don't do that. So the 1 tee works really well for us. I think we were just lucky that we were, as the business grew and expanded, then we were able to go back to Oaks pretty quickly and get that full complement, as Sharon was saying, just to get our full team back, because we knew that the wave was going to come. And as Paul's saying, I'm sure when Victoria opens up, it like as we've seen here, it will go gangbusters. I mean, I think we'll see 2 waves here. I think we've got all our Sydney people and all the captured New South Wales people that can't travel anywhere, they're coming to us. And I'm sure when the borders and everything open up, I know I've got lots of my Queensland groups that couldn't come down, are itching to get away and play. And obviously then the Victorians, they'll want to go and support their golf courses, but they're probably ones that do want to go and travel. So there's no doubt, I think the second wave will be coming. I think maybe we might all slow down a little bit, well, in the Hunter anyway, from our perspective, when there's opportunities to travel back to other destinations, but and other golf courses. So I think we've really honed in on and used it to our best advantage while people can only travel within this hub of New South Wales. We've taken every opportunity to seize on that with our advertising and stay for play packages and working with our wholesalers. So they've had to adapt too, obviously. A lot of these wholesalers that would have traditionally been working on sending groups to New Zealand or overseas have now had to reinvent themselves and become domestic wholesalers. So we've worked closely with those guys to help them, and it's obviously impacted in a positive way on our business. So we always as a management team throw around each week, sort of try to look at the trends and see which way it's going. Obviously with COVID, it's a day by day proposition, but I just think at the moment we've tended to tick most of the boxes in a really good way and capitalised on everything that we've got and planned for that.
Yeah, brilliant. And yourself, Steve, any learnings that if you had your time again, might be a little bit different because you are sort of attached to that public facility that you'd tweak?
Nothing that really comes to mind. Probably the main focus would be making sure that marshalling, once we sort of open and how busy it was, having that card out on course, just making sure groups are keeping the distance and not building up at tees. We found a little bit of that right at the start, but we quickly nipped that in the bud quickly. And what we found was effective for us, I guess I can only really talk about a members side of it, was just making sure that communication was on point. So everyone knew coming to the golf course what behaviours were expected, what the do's and don'ts were. That really, I guess, helped us and ensured sort of traffic was managed okay. And I guess we were low. Golf naturally is obviously a low risk, but that just couldn't hurt. That really definitely helped. Just making sure everyone was aware of the expectations coming to the course.
Yeah, for sure. Perfect. Paul, Sharon touched on not having a sort of disaster recovery plan. Golf clubs tend to be, how do we put this diplomatically, slow-moving beasts when it comes to governance and changing rules and restrictions and whatnot. Is there some advice potentially we can give to some of these Melbourne clubs and Victorian clubs about putting some policies and procedures in place that allow their in a managed club, their manager to make some decisions to be agile, and even in a volunteer-based club to give the president some power to make changes that are necessary to stay agile?
That's a really difficult question, Matt. I think, I mean, for a start, I don't think anyone could have possibly had a plan in place for what has happened.
No.
And it's probably more your ability to be agile enough to make adjustments with the very changing information that really came the way of everybody, really. And communication, as Steve says, is probably critical. In terms of longer term, we do know that clubs are steeped in history. They have formed the way they have, and they govern the way they have based on a long history. They don't change quickly. One of the advantages we have is we have a lot of experienced experts in other fields who are volunteers that help guide the club. We have a very interesting model in that regard, that we have so many people that contribute to boards in volunteer ways, and harnessing that talent and giving it sort of direction is important, and having policies and that helps the management do their job. Communicating to members is critical because things break down pretty quickly. But the story that we sort of largely have had out of this is that members have been very understanding. Clubs have done some dramatic things, everybody playing without men's and women's competitions, just putting them in medleys. Some clubs have had to manage by saying 9-hole golf only because we can't handle getting everybody a game if it's 18 holes. So members have adapted pretty well with good communication. But going forward, I'd largely think things will go back to a lot of the past routines. There'll be some opportunity for adjustments, but that'll become club by club. They'll work out what they want to do. But ultimately, I don't think the model's going to change in terms of how decision making will happen. I think that's largely going to stay the way it is.
Yeah, I would concur there. Just before we wrap, we've burned an hour pretty quickly here, which we sort of knew what was going to happen. But I'd just like to ask, what's the one thing you're looking forward to, perhaps in 2021, about how the golf club's operations have changed in this time? What's the one thing that you'd like to hang on to moving forward? Might start with you, Steve, perhaps.
Good question. I guess probably I guess what I've found is that ability to, I guess, that agility side of things of our operations, just to make sure that people are, I guess, trained in different parts of the business, so you can sort of throw people between departments. Especially sort of when Jobkeeper came down, it was finding different jobs for people, and I guess staff have become expected to, I guess, do different things that are outside their mainstream role. If a bar staff needs to jump in the kitchen, they're now happy to do so. So that's something that's going to hold us in good stead moving forward.
Yeah, fantastic. How about yourself, Brett? And again, a pretty varied business. What's the one thing you'd like to see stick around?
I think the overwhelming thing I think personally I've seen, and especially the golf shop team, because I do spend a fair bit of time with the boys in the shop, is just, I think just the generic customer coming through the door, and everyone just seems to be just in a grateful headspace to play golf, and like taking the small things for granted. Like, you know, in the past, you know, we've all, you know, golf has its prickly customers, but even our members, like we have a good bunch of members, but everyone just seems resonant and happy to be out playing golf. So I just hope, I think people have got in, and we've seen a lot of new people come into the sport, which is great. And I think people will stay in it now for sure, because they've got the bug playing. But I just hope moving forward, when we get out of the pandemic, the humbleness that people have got, and the friendliness, I hope that continues to rub off in the industry. That's what I'd like to take out of it.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's critical too, that we do have a focus on being friendly and realise how lucky we are to have facilities we can get out and play golf and wander around vast spaces and enjoy it. Sharon, what have you? What would be your one thing?
Probably more focused on the playing the game itself. Personally, I like those no rakes in bunkers. I think, you know, sped up a bit of play, and who knows what might come out of that with, you know, as we said, with the flag still in and all that sort of thing, and having the app playing, so it makes it a bit faster. But yeah, personally, I like those no rakes in bunkers. I think it's great.
It's interesting how long we put up with every member complaining about bunkers and whatnot.
Yeah, just preferring it in there, and
we can change it instantly. So
exactly.
It's amazing the change a pandemic can bring. Paul, there's one thing that you don't want to hang around, and that's lockdown. But is there anything that you'd like to see hang around in the industry moving forward?
I think there's lots, Matt, but I guess I love the comments we've just heard from everybody there. They're so true, and I agree with the bunkers as well. I do think, I'd love to think that with this lift in golf, that clubs have confidence to invest back into their facilities, and that will also give clubs a lift. I think, you know, there might be some tired old pro shops needing doing up, and other things around the club that can just give the club a lift. Maybe also adapting a little bit for how families can be part of the club a bit more, and mixing the golf up a little bit to give more people opportunities to play. So but I'm very optimistic that this will hang around for a while. And one other thing, I just hope that people also, once they can, they do get out and travel and play golf at other venues in the country. We know that with all the fires along the New South Wales and Victoria, that we would have loved to have promoted everyone to get out and support those towns. That will come, and we know also that even travel to Tasmania and King Island, all those cancelled bookings. I've talked to the tour people; they're all rebooked. So people are just deferring it. I think this is going to be very positive for a while. So let's capitalise.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Our time this morning has expired, so just on that, I'd like to just personally thank all four of you for your input. It's always good to have a conversation. Sharon, thanks for joining us today, and hope all is well and kicks off well at Mount Coolum.
Thank you.
Steve, mate, thanks for taking the time out, and hopefully there's many more public rounds converting into members for you, mate. It's good to see that that's happening.
Cheers, Matt.
And Brett, and thank you, mate. And I must say, mate, I was very surprised to hear, and it's a good surprise that the accommodation's going gangbusters. I would have thought that's a really high risk area for some clubs and facilities at the moment, but it's really pleasing to hear that local traveller is coming to facilities and continuing to spend money. So, mate, thanks for your time
Thank
today,
you.
and hope it kicks
Thank
off.
you.
Hope it
Thank
continues
you.
to go pretty well. And finally, thanks, Paul. I always enjoy our conversations. The quick 5-minute phone call doesn't exist between us. It usually goes for about an hour because we go down every rabbit hole, but it's good to go down rabbit holes properly with you today. So, yeah, thanks for your time as well.
Thanks, Matt. Well done.
Wonderful. And thanks for all the participants for jumping on. As always, it's always good to have people on board live. Thanks for joining us, and we'll speak next time. Ta.
Bye.
Hey.
Thanks, guys. That was good. That was a good chat. So I just ended the recording with the official bit. So, yeah.